Hi, everybody. I'm Kirsten Hoteling Zona. I'm a literature professor and a certified life coach and owner of Full Potential Coaching. I am here to talk to you about the relationship between self-sabotage. And when I'm talking about self-sabotage, I mean our most intractable, deep-grooved patterns that keep us from creating the life we want, like overeating, overdrinking, compulsive overworking, chronic procrastination, and the like. Those old patterns we keep coming up against again and again, abandoning ourselves in relationships, chronic lack of boundaries. And I also want to talk to you about self-love, what it really is, how we get from self-sabotage to self-love. And I'm talking to you about these things because I am hosting a day-long retreat in Central Illinois a week from this Sunday on February 2nd, and I have 2 tickets left. And I want to give you a sneak peek into some of the teachings that will be core to that experience. So last week I talked to you about self-sabotage. Today I want to talk to you about self-love. So what do they have to do with one another? How do we get from one to the other? Well, the first thing we do is recognize that self-sabotage, those self-sabotaging habits that we are so ashamed of and so defeated by, that they are in fact not the impediment to self-love, but actually the gateway to self-love. Self-sabotaging habits aren't the thing we love ourselves despite of, but the thing we've learned to look squarely in the eye and love ourselves because of. Because when we look our self-sabotaging habits, and again, I'm talking about those most intractable habits that we feel like every year we make a new, fresh commitment to overcome for good. And after a few weeks, maybe a month and a half, we're just right back where we began, to the point where we feel pretty defeated and doomed and like this is just sort of the way it is. But when we really decide to look our self-sabotaging habit in the eye with a spirit of compassion and curiosity rather than self-loathing, self-shaming, and criticism, we can see a flicker of fear there. We can see a deep tenderness and yearning there. Because at the heart of every deeply self-sabotaging habit was the seed of self-preservation. Every self-sabotaging habit began at some point as an act of self-preservation. That is to say, a perhaps unskilled way, but successful way of buffering or escaping or otherwise dealing with a very painful experience. Trauma, neglect, overwhelm, etc. Right? So when we can start to see that our self-sabotaging habit, like overeating, began as an attempt to comfort ourselves in the face of abandonment, we can start to see that underneath that habit is simply a yearning for love and a sense of belonging and a sense of safety. Right? That is the key to moving from self-sabotage to self-love, because self-love is fundamentally the opposite of self-abandonment. It's having our backs. It's treating ourselves impeccably, our bodies, feeding our bodies food that fuels us beautifully, treating our spirits with reverence, listening to the call of our souls with honesty and integrity, showing up to our commitments and our relationships with authenticity and honesty, setting boundaries and enforcing them for ourselves and others, not abandoning ourselves. Right? And what do all of these practices, because self-love is a practice, what do they have in common? Presence. The ability to stay with ourselves regardless of what we're feeling, regardless of where we are, regardless of who we are with. This requires a degree of radical presence, holding the space for ourselves, which means being with ourselves even when, especially when, our feelings are incredibly uncomfortable and we are tempted to buffer them, escape them, avoid them with another pint of ice cream or another pair of shoes or another 2 hours of work, whatever it may be. Right? Self-love begins with the act of presence. Self-sabotage might be the gateway to self-love, but presence is the key that opens that gate. How then do we practice radical presence with ourselves when we are swirling in shame and feelings of defeat and frustration over habits and patterns of behavior that we can't seem to outrun? This is what I will teach you at our retreat, Self-Sabotage to Self-Love, how to overcome old patterns for good. If you're interested in this retreat, I would love to see you there. I just have 2 tickets left. The information is in the link below. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye-bye.